Hello everyone, welcome to the Silent Scars YouTube channel. Don't forget to give a like and a comment and a subscribe if you don't forget. Let's start one. My friend wasn't who I thought they were. Introduction. It all started when I met Alex, my new neighbor. Friendly and charismatic, Alex seemed like the perfect friend. We quickly bonded over shared interests, books, movies, and late-night conversations over coffee. But things began to feel off. Sometimes Alex would mention details about my life that I had never shared. At first I brushed it off as coincidences, but they became too specific to ignore. One evening, Alex invited me over for dinner. The apartment was cozy but oddly decorated, with walls covered in old photos of people I didn't recognize. As we ate, Alex asked me about my childhood, my family, and even my fears. The more we talked, the more I felt like I was being analyzed. Then I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. One of the photos on the wall was of me, as a child, at a park I hadn't visited in years. "How did you get this picture?" I asked, my voice shaking. Alex smiled but didn't answer directly, brushing off my question with a vague comment about collecting old photos. The next day, I decided to dig deeper. I searched Alex's name online but found nothing. No social media, no history, nothing at all. It was as if Alex didn't exist. Climax: a week later, I overheard a heated conversation through the thin walls separating our apartments. Alex was arguing with someone on the phone saying, "They're starting to suspect. We need to move faster." That night, I woke up to a shadow standing at the foot of my bed. My heart pounded as I scrambled for the light, but when I turned it on, there was no one there. Conclusion. The next morning, Alex's apartment was empty. It was as if they had vanished overnight. When I told the landlord, he seemed puzzled. "There's never been anyone in that unit," he said. "It's been vacant for months." I moved out a week later, but I still feel like I'm being watched. Sometimes in crowded places, I catch glimpses of someone who looks like Alex, disappearing before I can reach them. 2. My neighbor seemed normal, but had a dark secret introduction. Every morning as I left for work, I'd see my neighbor, Mr. Andre, tending to his garden. He was a polite man in his 50s, always wearing glasses and offering a warm smile. He seemed like the most ordinary person in the world. But one night, a strange noise woke me up. It came from his house, a dull thudding sound, as if something heavy was being dragged. At first I ignored it, but the noises grew louder and more frequent in the following nights. Body curiosity got the best of me. Late one evening, I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. Andre was dragging a large black bag out of his house. The bag looked stained, as though something red had leaked onto it. I hid behind my curtain and watched as he loaded it into his car and sped off. The next day, I decided to visit him under the pretense of admiring his flowers. As we chatted, I noticed a patch of his lawn that seemed freshly dug. When I asked about it, he gave me a cold smile. "Oh, just planting some tulips. They'll look beautiful in the spring." I left with a lump in my throat, but my curiosity drove me to investigate further. That night, I crept into his garden. The soil in the dug-up area was soft, and as I brushed it aside, I uncovered a piece of white fabric. Climax. Before I could dig further, a bright light blinded me. Andre stood there holding a flashlight. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice calm but menacing. I stammered an excuse, but he cut me off. "You know, curiosity often kills more than just the cat." I fled without looking back, but the noises from his house that night were louder than ever. Conclusion. 2 days later, Andre's house was empty. He had disappeared without a trace, leaving his garden untouched. The freshly dug patch was now cemented over. I reported everything to the police, but they found nothing. Still, I can't shake the feeling that his cold eyes are watching me from the shadows. 3. The phone that received messages from the past introduction. I found the phone at a flea market. It was an old rotary model, pale green and slightly scratched. The seller, an elderly man with a cryptic smile, told me, "It's just for decoration. It hasn't worked in years." I chuckled and bought it, thinking it would look charming in the retro corner of my apartment. That first night, something strange happened. The phone rang. Its metallic, shrill sound startled me, especially since it wasn't even plugged in. I answered, convinced it was some sort of prank. A trembling, whispered voice said, "Help me, I'm trapped here." Before I could respond, the line went dead. The next night, the phone rang again. This time, the voice was clearer. "I don't know where I am. Everything is dark." I asked who it was, but the call abruptly ended. My curiosity led me to research the phone's history. The flea market vendor had vanished, and I discovered that models like this were popular in the 1960s. Some even had eerie legends attached to them. Stories of calls beyond time. The calls became more frequent. The voice grew more desperate. One night it said, "You're the only one who can hear me. You must find me before it's too late." Climax. Then the dreams began. I saw an old house with peeling wallpaper and barred windows. The voice in the phone whispered an address, 12 Future Street. I had to go there. When I arrived, I found the house abandoned. Inside, everything matched my dreams. In a corner, I discovered a cracked mirror with the words, "Thank you for coming," etched into the glass. Suddenly, my cell phone rang. It wasn't from any number I recognized, and when I answered, all I heard was the sound of heavy breathing. Then the line went dead. Conclusion. I left the house in a panic, but I can't forget what I saw. Since that night, my phone rings at odd hours, and when I answer, there's nothing but silence. I keep the old rotary phone locked in my closet, but I hear it ringing sometimes, even when I'm not home. 4. A diary I found changed everything. Introduction. It was a quiet weekend when I stumbled upon it. While organizing an old shelf in my living room, I found a dusty, leather-bound diary. The name Mihai was etched on the cover in faded gold letters. Curious, I opened it. The first entry was dated 1985. It seemed like the journal of an ordinary young man, but there was something unsettling about the tone. Body. The entry started innocently enough, recounting daily events and random musings. But soon Mihai began describing a recurring nightmare, a shadow that followed him, whispering, "Your time is coming." At first he thought it was just a dream, but the whispers began invading his waking moments. He wrote about hearing them in empty rooms, seeing fleeting movements in his peripheral vision. One entry chilled me. "Last night I heard the whispers in my room. I tried to turn on the light, but the bulb exploded. I'm not alone anymore." I turned to the last page where Mihai had written, "If you're reading this, the shadow will find you too." As I read those words, the lamp in my room flickered violently before going out completely. Climax. Over the following days, I began having the same nightmare. The shadow appeared in my dreams, whispering the same haunting phrase, "Your time is coming." Worse, I started noticing it in real life. Dark movements in mirrors and corners of rooms. One night I decided to get rid of the diary. I threw it into the fireplace, but the flames extinguished as soon as the leather touched them. Desperate, I hid it in my attic, thinking it might stop the occurrences. Conclusion. The whispers haven't stopped, and sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps above me. The diary remains in the attic, but now I'm too afraid to go near it. Whatever haunted me high seems to have found a new target. Me. 5. My co-worker vanished overnight. Introduction. I had only known Andre for a few weeks. He was the new guy at the office. Quiet, polite, but always carrying an air of mystery. He didn't talk much about his personal life, and when he did, he seemed to dodge any direct questions. One morning I arrived at work to find his desk completely empty. No one knew where he was, and our manager told us he hadn't called in sick or given any notice. At first I assumed it was a family emergency, but days passed and Andre never returned. Body curiosity got the better of me. The last time I had seen Andre, he had looked uneasy, nervously glancing over his shoulder while whispering into his phone. I overheard snippets of his conversation. "They can't find me. I've already left." When I tried calling his number, it went straight to voicemail. Feeling unsettled, I decided to visit his apartment. The lights were on, but no one answered when I knocked. A nosy neighbor noticed me lingering and said, "Andre? He left a couple of nights ago. Strange people have been coming and going since." Determined to figure out what was happening, I checked online for any trace of Andre. But it was like he never existed. No social media, no records, nothing. Climax. A few nights later, I received an email from his account. The subject line read, "Help me." The email contained a set of coordinates in a chilling message. Don't tell anyone. You're in danger too. The coordinates led me to a forest on the outskirts of the city. In the middle of the woods, I found a small, decrepit cabin with its door ajar. Inside, there was nothing but a dusty table with a laptop. The screen displayed a video of Andre. In the video, he looked terrified. If you're seeing this, they've probably found you too. You have to leave immediately. Don't let them follow you. Before the video ended, the camera shook violently, and Andre was pulled into the darkness. Conclusion, I ran from the cabin, my heart pounding. When I returned the next day to find it, the cabin was gone, like it had never existed. I still receive cryptic emails from Andre, all saying the same thing. Keep moving. Don't look back. 6. A strange sound. Led me to a hidden door introduction. When I moved into my new apartment, everything seemed perfect, spacious, bright, and peaceful. The landlord mentioned it had been recently renovated, but one section of the living room wall seemed oddly out of place. I thought nothing of it until the night I first heard the sound. It was faint at first, like a soft tapping coming from the wall. I assumed it was the plumbing or noisy neighbors, but the sounds became louder and more distinct, especially late at night. Body after weeks of sleepless nights, I decided to investigate. I knocked on the wall, and to my shock, the tapping stopped. A few seconds later, it tapped back, a soft but deliberate response. Examining the wall closely, I noticed a fine crack outlining what looked like a door. Armed with a screwdriver, I chipped away at the plaster, uncovering an old wooden door that had been hidden beneath layers of paint and drywall. It took hours to pry it open. Behind the door was a staircase descending into darkness. The air was cold and carried a musty, metallic smell. With a flashlight in hand, I stepped down into the unknown. At the bottom was a small stone room. In the center was a table with a few objects: a rusted key, an old pocket watch frozen at 3:15, and a black and white photograph of a man who looked eerily like me. Climax. As I examined the objects, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned the flashlight, but no one was there. Suddenly, the pocket watch began ticking, and a raspy voice whispered from the darkness, "You shouldn't have opened the door. Now you can't go back." Panic set in. I bolted up the stairs and slammed the hidden door shut. When I checked the next morning, the door was gone. The wall was completely smooth again, as if nothing had ever been there. Conclusion. The tapping sound stopped, but every night at exactly 3:15, I feel a presence in the room. Sometimes I hear faint whispers, and my digital clock resets to 3:15, even when it's unplugged. I don't know what I unleashed, but I fear it's still with me. Don't forget to subscribe and a like because it helps me a lot. I love you. Bye.